Since the outbreak of hostilities in Korea, United Nations forces have captured over 150,000 prisoners. For the first time in its short history, the United Nations is confronted with the enormous problem of handling these prisoners of war. Ultimately, these captives arrive at the island of Kojedo, the main UN prisoner of war camp. All members of the United Nations are signatories to the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war of August 12, 1949. The articles guarantee humane treatment, safety, healthful conditions, and personal dignity. North Korea and Communist China are non-signatory to these articles, yet the United Nations has interpreted the convention to include them. These prisoners are assured of a high standard of treatment. The sick and wounded are taken to a fully equipped field hospital. Proper medical attention will be provided. The new prisoners are segregated according to rank and nationalities for processing. This is the captured enemy. Unaccustomed to an adequate diet in their own army, these men are generally in a semi-starved condition when captured. It will take time to regain a state of normalcy with regular diet. These captives are typical of the soldiers of the enemy. They are mainly uneducated and destitute farmers, impressed into the armed forces, often ignorant or indifferent to the very causes for which they fought. The immediate problem is to take these men who are dirty, unkempt, and lice-ridden and restore them to operating respectability. This, then, is the captured enemy. Dusting crews made up of prisoners of war use DDT to rid the vermin-infested new arrivals of lice. Achieving sanitary conditions is vital to the health and well-being of the prisoners. Preventive healthful measures require the removal of hair. PW barbers give the men a thorough shearing on a mass production basis. This removal of hair is important in the process of attaining personal cleanliness. Prisoners are inoculated against smallpox and typhus. They must be immunized to prevent a possible epidemic. The United Nations exerts every precaution to ensure healthful conditions. They are given a complete issue of clothing and supplies. Although salvage, Class X, and non-issuable, their clothing is superior in quantity and quality to anything most of these people ever had or would ever own in their lives. They receive 2 blankets, a raincoat, fatigue clothing, a cap, gloves, shoes, socks, and personal items such as soap, towel, and tobacco. The revival of personal dignity begins with the newly issued outfits. With new clothing comes pride in appearance, and self-respect. The old, unsanitary, and infected clothing is dumped and burned. The material reminders of their past go up in flames. Henceforth, they will live under firm but humane supervision. A finishing touch, and they are marked prisoners of war. The prisoners are ready to be processed in detail. A complete file is made of each prisoner, including his name, rank, and serial number, and date of birth. A capture card is then forwarded to Central Prisoner of War Information Agency, International Committee of the Red Cross, Geneva, Switzerland. Fingerprinting is essential to the prisoner's record. Before meals, PW food handlers observe proper rules of cleanliness. There are inspections to maintain high standards of sanitation. The typical PW kitchen operates on a mass basis. Preparation of food is made under strict supervision at all times to ensure compliance with regulations. Meals are served 3 times a day. In accordance with Geneva Convention, these men receive an Oriental-type diet, a diet to which they are accustomed. These rations, consisting of rice, barley, fish, and vegetables, comprise the essential daily food ration. The diet must be well balanced and prepared in sufficient quantity, quality, and variety. The prisoner is assured of proper nutrition at all times. After meals, strict sanitary measures are enforced. For their own benefit, routine maintenance details are daily requirements. Work details keep the new prisoners busy maintaining and improving their own camp facilities and equipment. Skilled prisoners are used to reduce the cost of camp maintenance, eliminating idleness and encouraging constructive activity. Sanitation and cleanliness are basic goals in these chores. Later, as authorized by the Geneva Convention, prisoners who are physically fit and qualified are employed on constructive labor projects outside the camp. Prisoners establish and maintain their own improvements on the island. The prisoner of war camp on the island of Cojedo is a completely new project. It was built in a few short months on the soft rice paddies of a valley where nothing existed before, an outstanding accomplishment by the engineers of the United Nations. Although standard materials and equipment were not utilized because of vital needs elsewhere and to spare expense, the engineers applied great ingenuity to the vast problem at hand. Labor is supplied by the prisoners of war under engineer supervision. Labor in the ancient and slow manner of the Orient. Already completed is a water system, which includes 2 miles of aqueduct and 12.5 miles of primary mains. Completed and under construction are many dams and reservoirs, several miles of sewer lines, electric power supply, and 430 acres of land for athletic fields and recreation. These improvements are for the express benefit of the prisoners. The pace of the work is slow, but is overcome by the great mass of men available. At least one day a week, there is complete release from work. Mental as well as physical well-being is encouraged. Stimulation of the mind serves to develop greater understanding and promotes the growth of personal dignity. There is still time for calisthenics and other diversions. Physical exercise is vital to the individual as a conditioning and health measure. Competitive sports serve as a natural and normal outlet for pent-up emotions, easing tensions and improving discipline. Morale is built by contests in which physical feats of strength and power are brought into play. Music and other forms of recreation and diversion are provided. Arts and crafts are encouraged to maintain and acquire skills. The men are permitted to engage in creative activities. Hobbies symbolize the heritage and culture of their native lands. The United Nations provides religious services and latitude in the exercise of religious preference. Chaplains of all faiths are available for spiritual guidance. Freedom of religious worship is recognized and prescribed by the Geneva Convention. A representative of the International Committee of the Red Cross is privileged to make frequent visits of inspection. He is free to discuss all phases of camp life with elected prisoner representatives. In addition, a representative of a protecting power, a neutral nation chosen to watch over the interests of a country at war, receives the same privileges. By these methods, the United Nations, in its first experience with the captured enemy, has established a high standard of treatment for prisoners of war. Even though the enemies are non-signatories, the captives are treated in accordance with the humane concepts of the Geneva Convention. They are free from physical danger and treated with personal dignity and self-respect. Their standards raised, they are assured of healthful conditions, proper nutrition, medical care, shelter, and clothing. They are provided mental and physical recreation with religious freedom for all. They are exposed to the ideals of a democratic way of life.